this may seem like an odd question to start Easter Sunday with, but I want to get your creative juices flowing, so go with me for a moment. What is the worst moment of your life? I know it. Come on, Pastor. We really want to talk about my worst moment? Yeah, just go with me for a moment. What's the worst moment of your life? For me, it was a time I was dating my wife, Darlene, at the time. Dating her. She was my girlfriend, but we were dating, and we walked into my mom and dad's home. They were having this church gathering, a party, if you will, and the pastor and his wife were there, and the pastor of their church and his wife, they had just had a brand new baby, and I had not seen the child yet. And so when I walked in the front door, they were sitting on a couch in my parents' living room. They're back to us, but I could see she was holding the baby. She had a blanket over the baby, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to sneak a peek at the baby. And I came up from behind the pastor's wife, and I peeled back the blanket so quickly to just say a hello and surprise her and the baby. And sure enough, I surprised me and everybody in the room. She was nursing that child. My parents' pastor's wife, yep, we got to see more than the baby that day. It was a worst moment for me. So what about you? A worst moment? What if I take that question and just change 2 words in there? What's the best moment of your life? Maybe it was a high school graduation and you just felt this sense of freedom that you finally finished high school. Or maybe it was when you got your college diploma and you knew you had worked so hard for that, finally you accomplished something like that. Or maybe it was a time when your team won the championship and you were elated in joy, and it was just one of those best moments. Or maybe it was a dream job you had always wanted and you finally got it. For some of you, maybe it was the day you walked down the aisle and got married to your sweetheart. Perhaps it was the day you held a child for the very first time, your very own child. Isn't it interesting that no matter how you answer either one of these 2 questions, what's the worst moment of your life or what's the best moment of your life, there's always someone that's had a worse day or a better day than you. You ever experienced it? You ever gone to a party and there's somebody there and it's like they're just beating their chest. They're big man on campus. They've got a better story. They're going to one-up everybody there. There was a really funny video clip by Brian Regan, the comedian, called I Walked on the Moon, and I thought you'd find some humor along with me on this, and it'll help us to illustrate the point. Check out this video.
That's why I have a social fantasy. I wish I was one of the 12 astronauts who have been on our moon. They must love knowing they can beat anybody's story whenever they want. They can sit back quietly at a dinner party while some other person, some me monster's doing his thing, and let him go. Let him run with the line while you be quiet. Oh, really? Let him have his moment. Yeah, I'm a big traveler. I have my business. I got my own global enterprise I got to check on. Driving in the Autobahn because I keep a fleet of sports cars over in Zurich. There's a Swiss account that I got to check. Mount Kilimanjaro expedition, might have to cancel that. Runways in Aspen are a lot shorter the first time you go in there. The Pacific Rim Company are going to try to take that over. Global enterprise. I walked on the moon. Well, you have the floor, Moonwalker. You mentioned driving on the Autobahn. That reminded me. Once I was driving in the Sea of Tranquility. In my lunar rover. And I, too, was worried about our speed till I remembered, wait, we're the only ones on the moon.
Speaking of walking on the moon, this is Neil Armstrong, the first human being to ever walk on the moon. Imagine when he returned home from that mission with all the parades and the fanfare, the hoopla, standing ovations everywhere he goes, confetti is flying, bands playing. You remember what he said at one of his very first ever press conferences? Neil Armstrong, here's what he said. I've walked on the moon, but never on the water. That's pretty humble, but it's honest. How about Christopher Columbus? Here's another good example. Before he sailed the ocean blue in 1492, the model on Spain's flag was Nace plus ultra, meaning no more beyond. There was nothing beyond their border. So geographically, Spain believed that they were the westernmost edge of the world. And they just didn't think there was anything beyond them. Well, after Christopher Columbus had sailed, they changed their national motto to read plus ultra, meaning more beyond. You know, I think this way during the Easter season, and maybe you can relate to this. It's almost like I'm a magnet drawn back to some favorite Easter passages or favorite Easter lines. And I just want to tell you, maybe my one line that I love more than any during the Easter season is this. It came from one of God's angels when he said in Mark chapter 16 and verse number 6, "He is not here." I love that line. You can say it with me right now. He is not here. What an awesome Easter line. Jesus is not here. If you want to answer a really big time question right now, what do you do with that? What do you do with he's not here? The answer is potentially very profound for you, very powerful for you and I. Because he was here, but now he's not here anymore. Jesus is claiming to push past the boundaries of death. He's going beyond where no other human being has ever been. In other words, think of it this way. If he showed up at the party with the who's who of the human race, everybody's telling their incredible stories, the accomplishments. Guys like Neil Armstrong go, yeah, well, I've walked on the moon. Kind of mic drop. Or Christopher Columbus. You know, guys, I sailed the ocean blue. I'm the one that pushed beyond the limits of what this world knew at that time. Or maybe David Miller's there and I go, you know what, guys, you might have walked on the moon. You may have done that by sailing the ocean. I scored 5 touchdowns in one game. And everybody would kind of snicker and laugh. Okay, big deal. Imagine if Jesus were at the party. He's over at the dessert table just kind of hanging out, listening to everybody else share their amazing stories of their best moments. And Jesus steps in and says something profound. He said, yeah, guys, I died. I was wrapped up in grave clothes, placed in a tomb for 3 days, and then I rose from the dead. Dropped the mic right there. You know, several years ago, one of our children, all 3 of our children learned to drive during high school years, and I'm going to keep this confidential which child it was, but you might be able to figure it out as I tell this story. I was driving home from work one day and I got a phone call from my wife and it went something like this. Hey honey, how's your day gone? And I responded, oh, it's been a great day, looking forward to being home. She then proceeded to say, hey, I need to prepare you. Your daughter has made a mistake while driving today. Okay, is she okay? The answer was certainly, she's okay. So, you know, when I heard your daughter has made a mistake today, you know, technically our daughter is our daughter, not just my daughter, but she had had a pretty big blunder. Our daughter, 2 of our kids grew up driving a white minivan. That's how they learned to drive, was on a white minivan. And she was pulling into our garage, which has brown paint along the sides of the home. And she scraped the entire side of the white minivan along that brown paint on the side of the home. And when I walked in, she didn't want to see me. She was running from me because she was scared, ashamed, embarrassed, if you will. Maybe even feeling some guilt over what she had done. I pulled the van out of the garage and began to assess the damage, and she came out to look at it with me, and I just put my arms around her and said something like this. Hey honey, it's okay. And she was crying, oh Dad, I'm so sorry. What can I do? How can I fix it? What do I need to do? And as I assessed the damage, it was like the light bulb came on in this moment, and I thought, okay, you're in high school, you're playing sports, there's no time to have an extra job, there's no income. There's no way you can pay for this damage. I mean, the entire right side of our vehicle had brown paint down it. So we're either going to drive it with brown paint on the side of the car, or I need to get it fixed. And I simply said to her, honey, it's okay. I got it. And in that moment, I thought, you know what, this is something I can take care of. It's a great teaching opportunity for me with my daughter about grace. Sweetheart, I got this. Dad has it. I've got the means to fix it. I've got the knowledge to fix it. So I went down to the local auto supply place, gathered some supplies together on how to get paint scuffs off of the side of a white car. And I went back home, and several hours later, after working on the side of the van, most, if not all, of that brown paint was gone. It's interesting. One of my daughters, in her worst moment, at least at that point in her life, she was so embarrassed. She felt so bad, so ashamed. It was a worst moment. Became really one of my best moments. It was a chance for me to demonstrate grace for her, that I was able to, as a dad, as a father, take care of something she couldn't fix. She didn't know how to fix. So a worst moment for my child became a really great moment for me as a father. You know, the same can be said of Jesus. The crucifixion, perhaps one of his worst moments. But the resurrection was one of his Father's greatest moments. He is not here. Mark chapter 16 and verse number 6. What a profound moment, but not everybody knew how to process that he is not here. Even on that day that Jesus rose from the dead, the first ones to the tomb were some women. And as they got down to the tomb and they looked in, they didn't see him. They were not sure what to do. As a matter of fact, 2 verses later, in Mark 16, verse number 8, Scripture says, the women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered. Man, they ran. Where did they run to? They ran back to the upper room where the disciples had locked themselves inside this room, because they didn't know what to do with he is not here. So they got into a foot race, and they race back to the tomb. And when they get there and they see the garments folded neatly lying there, they're confused. He's not here. Think of it this way. I know this is kind of a simple way to think of it, but maybe this will help you to understand. What does this mean for you and I when we go, you know, he is not here? Think of it like this. You ever been to a wedding? I used to do a lot of weddings when I was a youth pastor, a marriage pastor. I would do a lot of weddings, and even at my own wedding, we had our ceremony, and after the ceremony, you'll see the bride and groom in the wedding party. They'll get photographs taken, and sometimes there's this reception on campus or at another location, and all of the people that have been invited to the wedding go to this reception. Well, similar, like maybe you've seen, we had the same thing, and everybody went into this room, and they began to eat and hang out, and music was playing, and we were getting pictures done. But there comes a point when the wedding party comes back to the reception. And then there's this moment, and I've seen it so many times. There's this moment when the doors open and somebody announces, "Let me introduce to you," and I'll just use Darlene, Mr. and Mrs. David Miller, and you walk through and everybody erupts in applause and cheers, and sometimes they throw things, and everybody is so excited. Why? Because the party is not the same without the bride and groom there. The bride and groom make the party better. They could have a great time at the reception, but when the bride and groom show up, now the party begins. And this is a picture of heaven for us. In the very last book of the Bible, it's called the book of Revelation. It is describing heaven like this. That heaven is like this bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And the party has already started about 2,000 years ago when Jesus rose from the dead, when our King defeated and destroyed our greatest enemy called death. The party began in heaven. But not all of the wedding party is there yet. For those of you who proclaim, you're not ashamed to proclaim Jesus as your Savior. Let me just remind you, you'll be at this party. And the Bible teaches us that when we are absent from this body, we will be present before the Lord. So when you stand before God, the moment this life ends, you're going to be cheered and welcomed into heaven if you know Him. Those of you who have given your life in faith to Jesus, I hope you hear this, you make the party better. Why wouldn't anyone want to be loved and accepted like this? So don't miss it this Easter. He is not here. That's what the angel of God said. He's not here. Now we know that several weeks went by and Jesus met with people and kind of set up a system to advance the gospel. But today, He's in heaven, at the right hand of the Father. The price has already been paid for you and me. Our sin is what keeps us from God the Father. But Jesus Himself, He stepped out of heaven and invaded this world by making it possible so that we could know the Creator of the universe in a very real and authentic way. Jesus came and took our sin on Him. He paid the price of death. And it was a price tag we could not pay. And what do we have to do? We got to accept this by faith. When you believe in your heart that God's raised Jesus from the dead, you can be saved, is what Scripture calls it. You can, in other words, become a part of the family of God, and it's free to you. But you and I have to humble ourselves before Him. It's not something we can do on our own. It is something that He has already done for us. We just have to accept. The Bible says, all who call on the name of Jesus, believing in Him, believing that He has died, been buried for 3 days, and rose again, can be saved. You know, one day those doors are going to open. And one day there will be those who will be cheered on. There are a lot of saints who have gone on before us that are there in heaven awaiting you for the party. And that day will come when this life will end. What will you say to God when you are standing before Him? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 in the New Testament says this, for the Lord Himself will come down from heaven with a commanding shout. Now, I just want to remind us, this is a reference to when Jesus returns to earth. See, He came, lived in bodily form, who knew no sin, never committed a single sin. He was the perfect sacrifice. Died on the cross, buried for 3 days, and today we celebrate that He rose again. But He returned back to heaven. And the Bible says that one day He will come back. And life as we know it will cease. He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. It's going to be spectacular. But people have been debating for centuries. What does this passage from 1 Thessalonians, what does it mean? What is exactly this commanding shout? Who's going to hear the commanding shout? Is all of creation going to hear this? Again, it's been debated for centuries. Nobody really knows exactly what that shout will look like. But could I just be so bold to say, maybe that shout will sound something like this. Jesus returning saying, no more. No more Parkinson's, no more dementia. No more diabetes and cancer. It's over. No more need for radiation and chemotherapy. No more need for crutches and a cast or a wheelchair. No more suicide bombers and school shooters. No more anxiety medicine. No more rejection and loneliness. No more depression or suicide. No more child abuse or child neglect. No more acne. No more flu shots. No more colds. No more yelling. No more fighting. No more taxes. No more elections. Boy, could I get a big amen right there. No more foreclosures or bankruptcy. No more coronavirus. No more caskets. No more funerals. No more death. And this is what I don't want you to miss. Easter is all about this incredible phrase, He is not here. He's no longer in the grave, so that you and I could have life. You can take your worst moments and hand them over to Him. And He can turn them into a best moment. So that one day when you stand before God, at your entrance into heaven, you too can be cheered on. Because in this lifetime, you chose Jesus over everybody else. It starts now. Would you give your life in faith to Jesus today? He didn't just die to be a martyr. He died so that you can live. But God said it'll only be for those who accept his plan. And his plan is for us to repent of sin, humble ourselves, and ask for forgiveness. So right now, on this special day, would you invite Jesus into your life? Right here, right now. Whether you're in your living room or at your table, sitting on the couch or sitting on your bed. Maybe you're sitting in your car or at your workstation. Wherever you are right now, I want to remind you that a loving God wants you to know him today, and he wants there to be that moment, which will be your greatest moment, when you stand before him and he says, come on in. Right now, I want to encourage you, would you be so bold to give your life to Jesus? How do we do that? Well, Scripture says that we confess it with our mouth. That's called prayer. I know that everybody in our culture knows what prayer is. Not everybody maybe fully understands how to pray. But for those who need this one prayer, it is God who stands on the edge of heaven listening in for you. Maybe you would say something like this. And I'm just giving you some words of encouragement on how to invite him into your life. Say something like this. God, I know that I am a sinner. And I ask for your forgiveness. I believe Jesus Christ is your Son. And I believe that Jesus died for my sin. And I believe with everything in me that you raised him to life. I know he's no longer in the grave. I want to trust him today. And I'm giving my life to you for Jesus to become my Savior. And I will follow him as my Lord from this day forward. God, would you guide my life? Help me to do your will. And I pray all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Hey man, can I just say for those of you accepting Jesus today, welcome to the family. One day you're going to stand at the gates of heaven, and when they open, you will have so many thousands, millions that will be cheering you on. The ticker day parade will begin for you. So I want to say to you, if you do not know Jesus, man, go back, rewatch this, and give your life to him. And if you already know him, I want to remind us on this very unique and special day. He's not here, is what the angel of God said. He's risen from the dead. How exciting is that? And one day he will welcome us home. For all of you that are accepting Jesus today, welcome into the family. And when the gates of heaven open and people cheer you on, it's going to be an awesome moment. It will be your greatest moment. So I want to say to you, thanks for being a part of the online experience today. But we're not done. This is simply one portion of our online experience, but I'm so glad you tuned in today to check it out and listen to what God had for you. Hey, he's not here. He's risen from the dead. And here's some other things we want you to know from the Fellowship Church. Thanks. Have an awesome day.